Welcome to the SQOLOGY Podcast. Many thanks to ResoNix Sound Solutions for making this podcast a reality. There's a link in the show notes, but you can find out more about ResoNix Sound Treatments, along with tons of other info, resources, and products at ResoNixSoundSolutions.com. Now on with the show. This week we are joined again by Adam. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
And new guest, Brian Gill. Hello, Brian.
Hey, everybody.
So Brian has not been here before, but he has been around. In fact, I think the first time we really interacted, was at a audio specialist or Sonus show, or was it the Sonus place?
Yeah.
And he had a cross trek at the time, which he's moved up in vehicles since then a couple times.
Just a little bit.
But honestly, I mean, that cross trek was one of my favorites. I mean, it sounded great. It was simple. I mean, it had a really great everyday sound. I mean, who knows what it did on a score sheet? I don't even remember, but as far as listening to it, it was fun.
Plenty of room to scissor in the back.
Do what?
Yes.
Plenty of room to scissor in the back.
It also came with season tickets to the WNBA.
Nice. Free with every purchase. Well, now that we've upset 0% of our listening segment,
I don't really care.
So Brian's from the Nashville area. I assume south of Nashville is where you're actually at. And as would come with being in the Nashville area and being involved with music, he is involved in the recording production industry. So Brian, why don't you give a little bit of a history about yourself, where you came from, how you got involved in all that, and then kind of what led you into car audio?
Sure. So I go way back. I'm originally from Southern Illinois. There is a shop located in Evansville, Indiana that built my first car back in
I know where that is.
90. Yeah, you know where that is. PJ's Cartoons. I had a black Grand Prix. I think I built it 96, 97, somewhere in there.
You were on the bad team.
I was on the bad team.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were on I don't even know what side of Evansville that is. Not the same side as Yellig, east side.
Yellig was downtown. Then,
yep.
Yeah. For context, the opposing shop was Yellig Auto Radio, which was founded by my wife's grandfather in 1946. So there's a little bit of history between PJ's and Yellig. Anyway,
so I've always kind of been interested in music and audio. I competed with that Grand Prix for years, until college age, right? Had some success, placed in finals a few times, USAC and IASCA. Won a Best of Show at Spring Break Nationals one year in Daytona, back when we still had big events.
What year was that? Do you remember?
98. 99, 2000, somewhere in there. I think in USAC, I was in Consumer 601 and Plus.
Mm.
And I asked
Power Class days.
Back in the Power Class days, yeah. Mainly USAC because that's kind of what was in the area.
Right.
I did a little bit of IASCA.
Yeah, because that would have been right before the USAC to Mecca switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had Steve handling USAC mostly in the area, but anyway.
Yeah. So off to college, wasn't really happy doing what I was doing there. Left, went to audio engineering school, and came straight to Nashville. And I've been here since 2003. Yeah, took a hiatus from car audio and kind of got back into it. Mid to late 2000s, probably later in the 2000s, and still doing it, still love it. It's just kind of funny what I do for a living now just translates to what I do for a hobby. Was never really planned to be that.
Delve into that a little bit. What do you do for a living?
Sure. So I am a recording engineer by trade. Record, mix, edit music, some vocal tuning. I hate vocal tuning, but I can do it.
What's vocal tuning?
So when you have an artist that comes in and sings, we will use a program. I use a program called Melodyne. And we can correct pitch, add vibrato, a little bit.
So you can make Adam sound good.
Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah, but can you make Spanish Harlem sound good?
Well, I mean, I'd have to do the Spanish Harlem to what I do with all the other tracks that I compete with.
Throw them
Kidding everybody.
Right.
No, I've actually been accused of doctoring tracks. It's kind of funny.
Who doesn't? I mean, that's what you have to do to win, right?
That's right.
Pull out your Winamp. Pull out the Winamp and
yeah,
resample that bitch.
yeah. I get to make records for a living. It's fun. The last few years, a lot of my work has been coming from broadcast, TV shows, award shows, either mixing or it's a position called an A2, which basically I interface the band or the stage, depending on the event, with the production truck and kind of there for the mixer if they have any, because I work on the same few trucks a lot. So if it's a mixer that comes in that doesn't know that truck, it's, they kind of rely on me to make it work.
I got you.
So it's good. So a little more the technical side, which I really enjoy more than the creative side.
Right.
So is that just running an RCA from the mixer board to the truck?
No, that's close.
That's what the hooker is for.
We have a saying. So they always put the TV trucks by like the dumpsters, and there's nothing that smells like television. It's hilarious. Every time.
Oh.
But yeah,
it's really cool knowing Brian to listen to this, just the stuff he gets into. So it's a pretty cool career. I'm not gonna lie. Thinking about changing.
My advice would be don't.
Oh, a lot of people say that about a lot of careers.
Yeah,
no, any career that anybody's in, that they say don't do it.
It's good, right? I enjoy it. Everything changes. Being a freelancer, it sometimes it can get stressful because you don't know when the next thing's going to fall in your lap.
Right.
But it always does. So it's not an issue, but you're just like, from like Thanksgiving to the first of the year, like production pretty much stops, and you're like, I need to work.
Right.
So it's good. I enjoy it. Everything changes, right? There's no two shows are the same. So it's a constant learning experience.
What's been one of the biggest opportunities or just things that have happened because of you being in that field?
One of the favorite things I got to do was work with Sia at the Grammys.
Yeah.
When she did the, when she stood in the corner and didn't show her face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got to do that. And then I got to do, it was ACM Awards. I think it was Sugarland with Rihanna, they did a song called California King Bed. That was a lot of fun for live.
Mm-hmm.
Record wise, I've worked on a lot of pretty large records. Myself and another engineer were nominated for a Grammy for a song called Life in a Northern Town. It was a live mix. It was a Little Big Town, Jake Owens, Sugarland, and somebody else. We were beat out by Robert Plant and Alison Krauss. So
not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah,
it could be worse.
Yeah, it could be worse. So it's cool to be nominated for a Grammy. And that engineer I was working with has gone on. Now he's producing all the Luke Combs records and having a ton of success, which is great to see.
Nice. Has there been anything like in the past few years since you've gotten more heavy back into competition and, well, more than a few years, but, the past decade?
Sure. Yeah.
Has there been anything that has translated during that time from something you've learned working on the studio side of things and the production side of things that's translated into car audio for you?
Yeah, absolutely. How important phases, even down to the point where we, when we record, we will measure the height of the overhead mics from the snare drum to make sure they are equal distance. And then we'll print it a little bit in Pro Tools, equal distance from the snare drum. So then we'll print it in Pro Tools, a few seconds so we can zoom in and see the waveform. So we can adjust those mics even more if need be. Because the tighter that phase is, the more snare pop you're going to get, just the better the drum kit's going to sound overall, and less work we have to do in post. We don't have to fix it. By going in and moving waveforms, moving audio forward or backwards to line up with individual hits, right? So we don't have to go and real time align the whole drum kit microphone by microphone.
Right.
Which is really time consuming. And that translates to like PA, right? At a concert, they use smart to time align their PAs
Sure.
to give the best listening experience they can to the audience. Time.
Right. So on that note, like I know obviously you have a lot of control over width in terms of record. You know, when you're in the recording process, you have a lot of control over width. You have control over space and the width with your control of phasing. Just like when you're reproducing things, phase has a lot to do with that. But like you mentioned in recording it, much of the recording itself can be in various levels of in and out of phase, which affects, you know, how you perceive the outcome, right?
Yes.
So what is your interpretation of input versus output when it comes to things that we have on the score sheet like height and depth?
So your depth comes, and that's not something that, and height is the same way. It's not, when we're setting and mixing a record, that's not things we think of.
Sure.
Your depth comes from, say, like on a drum kit particularly, is the easiest place to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have your close mics for your drums. You have overheads to kind of give you the overall drum kit. And then you'll put some room mics, you know, somewhere in the big room with the drum kit, right? Just to capture some ambience and things like that, right? And so we don't have a magic button that goes, hey, I want to put this, you know, 3 inches in front of this. It just, you know, it just kind of, it just happens. Yeah. You know, we turn knobs and push faders until whatever we're doing feels good. And that's where it lands. We don't, you know, have like a depth plug-in or a height plug-in.
No.
You know,
I get it. But I'm just saying, like, is there a level of that in the recording itself, or do you think that height and depth comes more from just the physical layout of the results of the vehicle? I mean, is it something that's part of something that we're actually recreating, or is it something that is just inherent to the space of the vehicle?
I think it's more inherent to the space of the vehicle. But that being said, you know, if you have a singer that's up close on a microphone, they're going to sound bigger and closer, right? Or if they come off the microphone a few inches, they're going to sound a little further away. In the room that they're recording in, all that comes into effect. You know, something you hear the term close mic'd or you know, or far mic'd a lot. You know, like this instrument was close.
That's more like a translation of like dynamics and ambience working together to create that. Okay.
I do, yeah. And it's, you know, and we have reverb plugins and delays and things like that we can use to give a bigger sense of space in a recording. Or actually, we go as far as particular instruments, right? We don't put like a reverb on an entire mix. Mm-hmm. You know, we'll add it to like a snare drum, a kick drum, maybe, you know, and some toms, probably not the overheads, right? Mm-hmm. Guitars, things like that. But we don't like set and think of, you know, I want to place this left of center in a mix. You kind of find holes where there's not instrumentations and you put things there. Mm-hmm. You know, and the producer,
like it's like a file system versus an actual space.
You know, and depending on the producer, you have producers that are really good that know exactly what like instrument they want to be the lead in a track or a certain part of a song. And then you have some, we call it an all play. Everybody's just doing their thing. And as a mixer, you try to figure out what works, right? So you can mix the same song a couple times and it's going to sound completely different. You may feature acoustic guitar or a piano or electric guitar, you know, in the mix differently, and it totally changes the way the mix sounds. And that makes it really hard because you can turn a mix into an artist or whoever, and they go, no, I really wanted this. And you spent 8 or 10 hours doing something, and they're like, nope, I hate it. I want this to be, and then you're starting over.
Right.
So it's really nice to have a producer that's a professional and really knows what they're after.
Sure. How much do you think the people in the recording and production industry know about our complaints about the loudness wars, for example? Do they care? I mean, does anybody care, or is it just...
No, they don't care. You know, so there's kind of not really a standard. The way myself and the engineer I came up under and a few others work. So We compress when we record.
Sure.
We will compress when we mix. And then we will do an overall compression on our 2 mix, right? Just the stereo left-right track.
Right.
And then it will go to mastering, where those guys, the mastering engineer will, they'll put the songs in order. They'll try to, even though we're mixing all these same songs, right? They're all going to sound sonically a little bit different. So they'll EQ just the left and right, the 2 mix, to kind of make them all feel the same. But they'll add compression, so everything's kind of the same loudness. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the really good mastering engineers will, we'll send them something, and the guy that we use will bounce it back and go, hey, if this was a little bit different in the mix, or if you took some compression off of this, I could do this, and it would be, so we'll make some tweaks to our mix based on what the mastering engineer does. There's plenty of dynamics. We don't try to over compress, right? Because it's going to get compressed in all these different stages. And then it goes to radio and it gets compressed even more. And then iTunes, whatever, right? So the less compression we do in the mix process, the more dynamic it's going to be when it gets spit out to radio.
Mm-hmm. Related to the last question, as far as imaging goes and that, what are your thoughts as far as when people, and I don't think it's come up as much recently, but as far as when people talk about like a big image size versus a little image size inside vehicle, as far as in car audio competition terms.
Yeah.
And I mean, is that something that is, and I think you've already kind of answered to a certain degree that it's not really thought about, that type of stuff isn't really thought about on the input side. But I mean, what's your thoughts on that as far as the reproduction side and what you aim for on the car audio end of things?
Well, I listen to it as if you listen to a record at home, everything you hear is relative to the size of whatever set of speakers you're listening to.
Sure. And
it's the same as a car, right? Like, if you listen to a track that has, let's use a cello, right? Most people know what a cello sounds like. A cello is not a small baseball-sized instrument in the center of your dash, right? A cello is going to have some size and some body to it. That being said, it shouldn't fill, your entire soundstage in a car, but it shouldn't, you should be able to tell that it's a big instrument, right? And not a flute, right? A flute is much smaller in size, so it should be perceived that way, I think, in a car. All relative to the environment you're listening in.
Oh, yeah. Speaker dispersion patterns and speaker sizes will play a role in near-field listening more so than the recording, I think. I mean, it's just a natural product of what you're listening to it on.
Sure.
I mean, the stage needs to be symmetrical. I mean, if your cello's big and bloomy and, your flute's perfect and small and tight, then that's a byproduct of the car and the tuning.
I would agree with that.
So
how many, I mean, I know you have a lot of, studios are a big budget thing. I assume that you have at least millions of dollars worth of cables, since that's the most important part of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually funny. We were working on a record at a studio here in town. I'll leave it unnamed. Mm-hmm. This was, 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in there, right? It was a beautiful room, top of the line, everything. And we were just recording there. We weren't mixing it. We were going to take it somewhere else and mix it in Pro Tools, mix it in the box, and not mix it on a console, which is the norm. Mm-hmm. So we were just returning a 2 mix out of Pro Tools to the console, just a left, right, so we could hear it in the room, right? Bring it up. So we had monitor control and all that.
Right.
The owner of the studio came in. It was like, oh, well, you got to bring it out, mix it out on this desk. We have this $10,000 speaker cable going from this amp, right, which was right behind the console, to a pair of Yamaha NS10s. And we weren't using the NS10s. Right. We were using our own monitors, but they're like, oh, I was like, they're like, just mixing in the box it's not the same. A year or two later, they built this beautiful room that's all done with diffusion, right? There's no acoustic absorption in the mix room. Mm-hmm. They built it for an engineer named George Massenberg, which the dude's a legend, right? He has plugins named after him. He has hard gear, external mic pre's, compressors, things like that. A great engineer. Mm-hmm. But he was mixing all in Pro Tools at the time. And as soon as they built that room, it's like, oh man, this Pro Tools sounds great. I don't know why people, I was like, really? Mixing analog has a thing. It has a sound and it's really good. But Pro Tools has gotten so good, especially when they stepped up to 64-bit. And, the plugins are really...
Plugins now, it seems like,
they're so good.
Undiscernible from using an analog desk.
They really are. And that makes recalls faster, right? So if you mix on an analog console, when you have to do a recall of a song, so you got to put every knob, button, fader back to exactly where it was.
Right.
We have patch bays, right? So we can patch. So each channel on a recording console has inserts.
Mm-hmm.
So you can insert external compressors or EQs or whatever, right? So you have to document all those patches, which sometimes on a big mix session, I think the biggest one I had was like 118 patches.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So each piece of gear has an in and an out.
Right.
And then all those pieces of external gear have to be documented. So you can never get it back exactly.
Well, and not to mention your incremental degradation of the equipment itself. And then, hey, when do we last recap this channel? Or it's like...
Exactly.
I mean, I'll think, some of these desks, each channel has a underneath section that's as big as most people's, personal computer in 1996.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's an insane amount of equipment.
So if you take like a SSL 9000J console, I was bored one day on a session, so I counted all the buttons, knobs, faders.
You were really bored. Like dots on the ceiling.
On each channel, there was 139, 140, something like that, buttons and knobs and faders per channel. The console was 96 inputs, plus whatever was in the center section. I didn't count those. That has all your automation and all that stuff, your recall, So it's ungodly, right? And they never get turned off. They're thousands and thousands of dollars a month on your power bill.
Right.
Like one facility I work in, their electric bill is about $60,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's where I went to engineering school in Florida is a school called Full Sail. They were talking about $1 million a month for their electric bill between the recording studios, the film studios. They have a game design program, right? So you have all the servers running for all the software to build your games, create your games, right? And do all the 3D rendering and stuff like that. $1 million a month for electric.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, now most people can run Pro Tools on a MacBook, a MacBook Pro. And you open your session and your recall is done, in seconds instead of
it's there. Exactly.
Instead of a couple hours, right? So there's still a place for those big tracking sessions, right? Sure. You're not going to create a sound of like an ocean wave, right? Recording drums in your basement. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you can mix in your basement, right? And have some good monitors in a decently treated room. You're fine.
Right. Right.
So when you do your live stuff, how much different is that? Like we've talked about the Cerebrellis track used to be mine. It's just nuts. We were talking about heights, widths, like that track does things that is just crazy. Like this, you can really get a sense of giant space there. And reverb, like where do we get so from a room for recording there versus like when you go do your live stuff, like what's how does that stuff differ?
Sure. Yeah. I don't do a lot of live, like an award show is different, but as far as like a concert, I don't do a lot of live mixing. I absolutely hate it because you have no control over your environment, right? Temperature matters, humidity matters, wind matters if you're outside. But like on that Cerebrellis track, I don't know if you've ever been to the Hollywood Bowl.
No, I haven't.
It's like a big dome over the stage, right? So on that particular track, one thing, the first time I heard it, I called Howard. I was like, holy crap. And a lot of cars, when we listen, the vocal is usually a little bit forward and all the instrumentation is behind that. The room information and all that is behind the lead singer, right? Or and in the Hollywood Bowl, since it is a dome, whoever recorded that and whoever mixed it, they captured the sound of that venue, right? So the piano is pretty big, her vocal is pretty big, but they're pushed back in the soundstage, and the ambience of that dome actually comes forward, which is really weird. So if you imagine like the front of the stage is the front of your dash, just using that for an example, and she's pushed back into that, right? So you get the sense of space in front of her vocal and the piano. It's unbelievable. Whoever captured that.
Yeah, that's one of those tracks you listen to anywhere you listen to it. I mean, even sometimes in good headphones, but like the bigger the system you listen to it on, I think the more impressive it gets. But it's just one of those tracks. It's like, man, how did they capture that? That's just like nothing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I have no idea how they captured it. Whoever did it did an awesome job.
That's really cool.
Are there any other recordings that you like are your golden standard as far as that goes, that are really above and beyond what, or something you would target, or just something that you don't understand?
There's a few. There's a song. It's called "Gism Hell." It is by, is it All American Rejects? Maybe.
Yeah.
That I think an engineer named Elliot Shiner mixed that. Mm-hmm. That's sonically, it's a great reference, right? And it's just like, this is really cool. Sounds great. And one that I use quite a bit is "Live to Tell" by Madonna. Sonically, it's almost perfect. It's a great sounding track. And I mean, there's a few others, right? Like when I go into a studio that I haven't worked in before, if I'm building a session, I listen to a lot of like Tom Waits, the Mule Variations record. I don't know why I picked that one, but I'll just have it on in the background while I'm working, just to try to get a feel for the room. Just, to kind of just get in sync with how the room sounds. Because I've worked on projects where it sounded great in the control room, and then you take it to mix it and it sounds like dog shit. It's horrible. Right. You're like, I really recorded this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like really bad. I'm like, oh, great. How am I going to fix this?
Right.
So it's nice to have a few tracks, right? And I think we all that do the car audio have our favorite few tracks that we always listen to, just because we know them, right?
Exactly.
And
yeah, it doesn't mean they're the best. It's just what we know. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I feel the same way about studio monitors, right? People are like, oh, what speakers do you use? It doesn't really matter as long as you know them. Yeah.
Lyle Lovett records really well, like some of his big band stuff and the church song. Yep. I mean, those are pretty neat. They're kind of the similar, got a big venue feel to them. It's interesting that those are studio recordings, so those are pretty cool too, to think that they're done in a studio.
Yeah, well, there's an engineer. He passed year before last, here in town. His name was Bill Vorndick. He did a lot of bluegrass stuff. He did some Alison Krauss. He did Union Station. A fantastic human being, a great engineer. And I actually met him. Was involved with the manufacturer of the interconnects that I use, a company called Astro Cable, right? Their main business is aerospace, but they dabble in pro audio.
I thought you were going to say Astro Glide for a second, but Astro Cable's cool too.
Has a P at the end.
That's only on Adam's OnlyFans page.
Hey, no free advertisement.
But Bill is an amazing engineer, right? So if you go listen to his records that he's working on, they're unbelievable. So you can get that sound right out of the studio. Just some engineers are really good at capturing that, right? And the musicians matter too. We have the best musicians in the world here in Nashville, and to watch those guys come in and hear a song that they've never heard before, look at a chart that's just got a bunch of numbers on it that tells them what chords to play. They'll listen to it once, and then in 10 minutes you have a finished track, basically. It's insane.
People that are, as far as playing and recording, I mean, it's not like there's not a ton of music songwriters out there player songwriters, as far as that goes. Like, a lot of people are just paid musicians, come in to fulfill a task,
Yeah. They're hired guns.
It's not creative at all. It's just play, like you said, play this chart and
play the chart. Songwriters and artists, right? the band you see on the road with, say, insert whoever, right? Brad Paisley. The band you see on the road with him is not the band that played the record, right?
Well, like Nine Inch Nails is a good thing of that, right? You got Trent, who's the lead man, but whoever's playing whatever could be whomever. Like it
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and some of these session guys are so good that the artists want them to go out on the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
they're like, we don't want to travel.
we don't want to travel. We don't have to. One of my dear friends here in town is that guy, right? He didn't want to go. They offered him a ton of money to go on a tour. It was something crazy, like $160,000 for 9 weeks, plus the use of the artist jet to go back and forth from Nashville to wherever. So he would fly like on a Thursday, right? He played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, fly home back to Nashville Sunday night so he could be with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would fly him back to wherever the bus was for the next one. But, and you get that with these session guys. And the road guys are great too, but the A-list session guys they're just unbelievable to watch. They know when to play, when to lay back, let somebody else, and nothing has to be said. They just kind of look each other, and you hire certain guys for certain sounds, like guitar player A, you may want a Telecaster kind of chicken picking country thing. Well, you'll hire that person that does that, right? But you're not going to hire somebody that's a Gibson guy. Is doing, they can do it all. They all can do it all, but they have their own kind of little thing that they do. And depending on the sound you want, that's the player that you hire for the day for that position.
Sure. Yep.
We did a session, pretty basic. It was just some demos. We're cutting 5 songs every 3 hours. So we cut 15 songs that day. The players got bored in the middle of the day, so they all switched instruments. It was hilarious, and it was great.
That's funny.
You're just like, seriously? And you're just like, I'm not a musician, and I was like, how did they do this?
It seems hard enough to learn one, but it's like, we went from speaking Russian to Chinese. No big deal.
No big deal. Yeah. And nobody knows the difference.
Right.
And then just one more short thing. Yeah. So I have a songwriter buddy of mine, and by songwriter, like 30 number ones, probably 100 million records sold, big time songwriter. So he does this thing. He has perfect pitch as a singer. He has a 3-octave range for a male singer, which is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But he does this thing. So he'll play the song in one key in his guitar and sing it in a different key.
Oh, gee.
Dude, yeah.
My mind would just break.
And they're pitch-wise, they're both correct. They're just in different keys. I'm just like, no. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it messes with everybody. He thinks it's hilarious. Like I said, I'm not a musician, but man, getting to work with these players on a regular basis is pretty special. You get to hear a lot of great instruments and just people that are perfect in their craft.
Yeah.
It's pretty special, and sometimes I'll take it for granted, but every now and then something will hit me. I'm just like, I get to do this for a living.
Yeah.
It's pretty special.
That's very cool.
Well, since the real reason we had you here was to talk to you about the music you picked for SVR and Aggieland.
You mean manipulated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Aggieland, Cliff. Let's talk about SVR and Aggieland, your 2 big shows this year.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Well, tell us what you expect out of competitors, and then we'll have Brian tell competitors how to be ready.
How to be ready. Well, I mean, I think it's all pretty universal stuff, right? I think maybe the difference between Aggieland and SVR is that everything's very, I guess maybe let's back that up a second. I guess the difference between a show that I run versus what other people do, I think a lot of times during the day or during the event itself, it seems like things are a little more nonchalant just because there's not really a competitor meeting. There's not really this or that. But to me, like between now and the show is the competitor meeting. There's no way to put down everything that you kind of need to know 5 minutes before the show and say, all right, guys, go have fun. But also, I try to get as much of that preparation done in advance where needed, and the parts that you can't really control, just let them go, because otherwise everybody gets tense for nothing. And I guess my biggest priority for myself in running the shows at all is to try to lower that anxiety, because I know how tough it can be. I guess it's probably, I'm more hyper focused on that probably, but I think that's why people enjoy the events and have less issues afterward and everything, because they can focus on what they need to at the time when it's game on and go, get it done, get out of the way, and then have fun with it,
Yeah.
That's my goal with it. And, to me, it's up to the competitors to, at that point,
Pay attention
or do their job as far as that goes.
With the risk of sounding like a complete asshole, if you're showing up to Aggieland and SVR and not prepared, those probably aren't the events for you to be going to.
It's a steamroller. I mean, it's if you're riding it, it's great. If you're getting run over by it, you're going to get run over by it. I mean, it's just
Yep,
100%.
But once you get run over by it, you're going to come up showing up prepared next time.
Absolutely.
It's not it's not like maybe this. No, you got run over by the bus and bear luck next time. And I think that's part of it is stress testing it. It's like brakes on a car to me with any of this, as far as like the equipment goes, the installs go, and everything else. Cool. Your factory brakes, between that and putting on Brimbos or whatever else, like you may not notice that going around town, but you hit the track for 30, 40 minutes and you're going to start noticing the difference between factory brakes and aftermarket setup. And I think it's the same thing here. Like when you're demoing your car for your buddy for 5 minutes, big deal. Everybody, that's not that hard. Having 6, 8, 10, 12 judges back to back in your car, that's
deal.
When it's like, that's and varying levels of music. You don't have a whole lot of control over much of anything. It's show up and
get run through the gauntlet.
And and my previous comment wasn't geared to new competitors. Is geared to anyone that shows up to these events and isn't prepared, right? These aren't the events to have your hand held and to get through.
Like a decathlon of audio events. Like it just keeps going and going,
Correct. Yeah.
I think there's a few different things here. I'm not going to, we're not going to concern ourselves as far as this goes, as far as, the tuning or that kind of thing. But I think there are some common threads in preparedness, and then during the show, and then after the show, that are all very important. I mean, I would say that assuming that your tune is on and you've done everything in your power to assume that you were just given a ready-built competition vehicle that works. We're not talking about how to do that part. We're just talking about, executing on a vehicle that we're going to assume is completely ready, has no issues, and is ready to go. I mean, I think the number one thing you can do prior to the event, as far as knowing that, and we'll set install to the side for the moment, but as far as the sound, as far as sound quality judging goes, I mean, and you guys can argue with me, yay or nay here, but I mean, I think the number one and two thing there that you can do in preparedness is knowing your listening position and your, listening levels.
Yes.
Agreed.
Because if you, where you tune that, where you listen at, both in position and level, is going to have a heavy outcome of, how things are done. Because obviously your curve is going to change based on how loud you're listening to it, right? And obviously where your head position is in the vehicle relative to everything. Some vehicles are less paranoid about that than others, but at the end of the day, starting out with the optimum position and level is going to be very important, and knowing those, both your median and where you need the listening level to be, letting the judge know that, also the maximum to where they don't go beyond that. Because, if your system has a maximum, which most do, and somebody might go beyond it. So, I mean, I think giving somebody that sweet range of where to listen to it, where to be positioned in the vehicle, how to replicate that and move forward. And it, like in Emma, it's expected. In the money rounds, I mean, the judges have a little more control, but I think it's still good to give them a range of, hey, this is where to listen to the vehicle. And I think most judges will follow that as long as it's not ridiculously low or high.
Yeah. Seating position for your judges is know your judges. If Howard Cantor's coming to your car, figure out how to take the seat out and let him sit at a normal height.
I don't have that problem getting Howard in my car.
That's true.
You don't have that problem?
Getting
Howard
out is
on. He doesn't get in them.
I have to carry a shoehorn to get some people out, but getting in is usually not a big deal.
Nathan was not happy when Howard and I judged 2-seat finals for his car. It was his whole car.
Yeah, it looked like a couple gorillas trying to drive a Tic Tac.
There's a picture out there somewhere of that.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, if you have Linda coming around and Richard, they're smaller. Keith was always a judge that I had to pay attention to, and he'd never say anything. And then after you got your score sheet back, you'd be like, "I too low." But it's the volume level you tune at, and the positioning of the judges is something that I put way more value in over the last few years, just from being, more experienced, but too judging. And it's something that people just didn't do a good job of a lot of times in the times I've been around. And I think it hurts them. I mean, Robert McIntosh is another one. He's short. I mean, he kind of sits more forward off the seat further. You have to kind of pay attention to heads off the seat further because of their body build, and you got to move the seat accordingly. But
one thing I notice, new competitors and veterans alike do it. If you have a mic array in your car the day of an event, probably shouldn't do that. Doing touch-ups and listening is one thing, but if you're trying to tune from scratch the day of, probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
And don't go chasing something just because somebody told you they heard something that they didn't like. It's trust yourself, right? Have a few people that you trust, listen, and verify, but don't, me, for example, if I'm in your car and tell you I don't like something or hear this, maybe get a couple other people in to listen to that, and verify it, but don't change it just because I said something. I mean, what do I know, right? Like, I don't know your car. I
think you and I have had that same conversation over and over again, where I've listened to your vehicle and been like, well, I'm hearing this, but I mean, that could just be me right now. So don't.
Absolutely.
I don't pull out your laptop. I'm just saying this is what I'm hearing. You asked for feedback, so here it is. But go from there.
Yep. Yeah, like I have an Excel sheet that I built that for each org that I can plug the numbers in and see the trends of my scores, so I can kind of know where to look. If something pops up after a few shows, these scores are a little lower here across the board, then I may visit it. But I trust myself.
Yeah, it's funny because first time I competed, the G35 had sail panels in it, like your Mercedes did, and tweeterless. So of course you have the effects of beaming and everything else, which can work to your favor,
absolutely,
or they can work against you. And I'd gone from a vehicle with just speakers firing into the windshield, and like listening height wasn't all that critical. It was yes, it was there, but it wasn't like it was a huge deal. And I had no idea. I hadn't taken into account at all. And one of my judges was, I forget her name right now, but she's from the UK. I asked a judge, and she was like 4'10", and she got out of the car after she was done judging and everything, and she's like, the center was right in front of me, and I'm like, yeah. And I'm getting other people, like I had Haji and a few other people getting there, and Haji was the one that found it because he's like a little shorter, but he wasn't like so short. So he like gets in the vehicle and he's sitting, and he's like, yeah, your center's fine. And then he was sitting there for a while, and as he got relaxed, he kind of fell into the seat, and he was like, oh, the center just went in front of me. And then he sat up again. He's like, oh, there's your problem. And I was like, oh crap. So I learned the hard way on that. And I think listening levels is something that I've just learned not as much from personal experience, but from watching score sheets and knowing the vehicles. Like you can, especially back in the Mecca versus Iasca days, where you had listeners like Matt Roberts who would listen quite loud, and then you had other, like Iasca, like Travis himself listens at a fairly low level typically, or at least used to, or did at one point. So you compare those two, for example, at the extremes with different vehicles, and now you have Emma in the mix as well, which like in Europe, listens very low, especially, lower than we do here. And you can really see where, okay, these cars that do really good in one organization don't do good in this organization over here. And they all are like, we just use the one tune and we do this and this is the way it is and this is the right way and blah, blah, blah. And okay, that's fine. But it seems like when you hit those extremes, the benefits of the system and where it's tuned at, definitely, obviously if you're tuning for 100 plus dB dynamic demo level, judging or listening, and then you get in and listen to it at 85 dB, I mean, that whole curve has changed, right? I mean, like, so the bass is going to be off, the top end's going to be off. There's going to be a lot of things that are different there. And, when you're listening at a lower level, your attention is more peaked. When you're listening at a higher level, it's more visceral, what you're getting physical impact wise. So I think that's the one thing that I think has been left off of a lot of people's checklists is knowing their vehicle's listening level and where to do it versus just go and listen however loud you want. It gets plenty loud. Okay, yes, it gets plenty loud, but where are you tuning for? Where did you go? Where's your shot at? And then make it go from there. Which things like dynamic EQ and stuff might change that in the future, but for now, people need to pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, it's good. All good advice.
But the HDSP had a dynamic, basically EQ in it, the Zapco processor.
Right.
It did, yeah.
For that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other DSPs that have that? I haven't.
Yeah,
seen
the DEQX that was in Black Betty, it had it.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I never played with the one in the Zapco.
It was good. You didn't hear it working, which was great. Like you couldn't hear it change. Yeah, I'm not going to get into talking about process. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole, but
no, it's good. It's good.
It is. It's an interesting tool, because
it is.
What you talk about between orgs is different, and I think a lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not, they struggled with it and can still probably struggle with it.
Or you can do like I do.
That's why they need to struggle with it to a certain degree, and I think that's part of it. Part of the thing is like people are like, well, music is music. It should, if the system sounds good, it should just sound good. And it's like, well, it's not quite that simple. If you want to look at why you're doing good or bad in this org versus that org, you need to learn kind of why, not just be like, oh, everybody, I just got screwed by 3/4 of the people. Like, no.
Yeah. Peter Steinbecker and I had that discussion a little bit with finals, him not understanding that we don't just have Emma.
Were you one of the ones that cried?
No, I cry a lot about things, but not about that. But, he wanted to help people, and that's great. And I actually commend him for it. And I know he's a successful, Emma competitor. But yeah, I mean, the Iasca deal and the, MASQ, and there's all kind of looking for something a little bit different, and the score sheets are just a little bit different. So it's something that I know high level competitors that have had a tune per org or a tune per judge. And I guess there's some that say they just use the one tune for everything. And if that works for them, that's great. But at the same time, there are very different things on score sheets between orgs, and there are very different music selections and recording styles. Emma is completely different than if we pull, music from Apple or, Tidal, and we stream it and save it,
I personally use one tune. I don't change tunes for orgs or judges. Probably should, but I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I get either way. I'm just saying, like,
sure.
Don't be surprised if there's a different outcome, and it's not just because you demoed something, because you listened to something at a certain level, because of this, whatever, like that doesn't mean that's what the judge heard.
Right.
So don't think that it's on them why it didn't compare, because you didn't compare. At the end of the day, you didn't compare every vehicle the way that judge did. You can't. That's part of the
100%.
process.
Well, one thing that really irks me, and sorry to go off on a tangent,
You're fine.
is when a competitor, doesn't matter who it is, right, gets pissy that they didn't win or do better than they thought they should. Like, okay, fine, but did you listen to every other car in your class that day? Like, what do you have to
Well, and again,
compare?
from that judge's perspective, like
from that judge's perspective, exactly.
Yeah.
With that though, it's like, know the rules, go through it, know your class. And this is a shift, I guess, for my events in particular that I should probably point out here. But this year is unlike any other year as far as that goes, or any other event that I've done, in that 98% of my focus is on the invitational round, the multi-judge, quote unquote money round of the show. The organizations are a peripheral part of the event that they are in control of, not me. And I used to encourage and require participation in each of the organizations and everything else. At this point, I can't really keep up with all that, and I've had to separate myself from all that. So I used to feel sorry for the competitors coming in and understanding the rules and classes, because it was like, well, I'm making you do this, so here's a helping hand on that. At this point, anybody coming to the event that is doing any one of the orgs is voluntarily doing it. It's your job to figure that out. You figure out the rules, you figure out your class, and if you don't know what to do, get with the organizations and learn it. But you guys need to get your shit together when it comes to that. Like, this isn't matter just throwing extra bucks at something and hoping for a chance for it to get a replacement. This isn't a craps table. Like, respect the org and take your time to understand where you fit into it and why and how to do well in that organization. Otherwise, maybe don't.
I think it's awesome. I think it's going to help these bigger shows run smoother and hopefully a little bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
The money round's big. That's why most people are there. The orgs are secondary, in my opinion, right? Like, if you're going to Aggieland, SVR, what are the other? Your focus is on the invitational round or the money round or the prize round, whatever you want.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
that's why you're there,
right?
Yeah,
and that's where your focus is. And I think it's awesome that you don't have to compete in 3 of the 4 orgs or 2 of the 3, whatever is there, right? That way, if you solely want to focus on the money round, then so be it, right? Like, you do.
I think we should call it the network round.
The network round. I like that. But I mean, and with knowing the rules is knowing the music.
Yes.
Links up to what everything else we've said here. I ask Mask, Mecca, Emma. Obviously, I'm like, Emma's going to be in a weird spot because like Euro Finals drops the new music a week or 2 later. But obviously for Aggieland, we'll be using the current music. So what's there now available is what will be used for the money round. All that is going out at the time we're recording this. I already sent that to Adam and Brian to review. I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at it, but there's also a link in there that goes to notes for each of the primary tracks.
Yep.
That gives a layout of what to expect in the music, what the music is good for, what that track's benefits, features, everything else, that to kind of get the judges and competitors on the same page as far as what we're listening for. We've never had this before in the money round to this degree. We did for Aggieland a few years ago, like when Nick Wingate and I did a podcast and kind of went through the music and what to expect and everything. But, this is documented in writing, visuals, everything. Like, this is what to expect with the music. And the core of that music will stay consistent between Aggieland and SVR. Obviously, we have crossover in judges and competitors, so that way we don't have to relearn everything from the ground up over and over.
And I think it's great what you're doing with it. And the actual written descriptions of what to expect from the tracks. The biggest thing I noticed at a lot of shows last year was now competitors are responsible for getting tracks themselves. It seems to be the wave of the future. So double, triple, 100% check that you've got your music. If it's supposed to be in a certain order, which I believe they all should be in the order that's given, make sure you have that. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on even at finals with music that wouldn't play on handheld players and thumb drives that wouldn't play after they've gotten them that day.
Yeah, don't show up at the event trying to figure out how to get your music to work, because
and these weren't just new people or
oh, I know, it's usually the most experienced guys who come up and are like, oh well, I need, here's my iPad, I need my music loaded up. Like, what? No, I'm not.
Yeah, all that stuff is given so far in advance now, and I don't agree that the competitor should have to provide the music.
Well, they don't, except for the fact that so many competitors now have locked-in devices that they kind of have to. So,
agreed.
I mean, if you have a CD player or a ability to plug in a USB drive, and then whatever device you're using properly sorts that, then the judges will have that. You don't have to get your own music. I don't care. But also, if you have a device that, is going to take 8 hours to figure out how to load the music in, then you need to do that in advance. That's your job.
I agree. I mean, it's just different. So, but yeah, that's something that has to be done. When a judge is in a car and they're in rhythm and they've gotten, 4 or 5 cars in front of you and everything's in the right order, the music was ready, and they get there and you're not ready. And then when you are ready and your music's in a different order, it's really going to throw those judges off. I don't care what any judge tells you. If they're in a groove going from car to car middle of the day and they get to a car and it's out of order, it's going to change things. It's going to throw them for a loop. They're going to have to look for something, go back.
Or if you're like, oh, I don't have that track, and it's like that track is the one track that this judge is using. There's their primary track to go vehicle to vehicle. You just messed up your entire day. Sorry.
Heroes.
and that's why I like the idea of like each judge or whatever having a separate, call it a bonus track, but it's also such a huge pain in the ass, right? Because you got to get those tracks and, just keep it. Here's the 10 tracks we're using. Each judge can use whatever of those 10 tracks they want and move on, right? Don't have a competitor bonus track. Don't have, a special track that's not in the playlist that the judge uses. It just slows things up.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
that's why we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Anymore. It was one of those things where, hey, I'll try anything once, but then
it was cool. Like I was going to use a track that I had recorded and mixed, and wait for somebody to tell me something was wrong with it. Like, really?
No, okay. Mofo, I was there.
No, I was there. Like,
I was in the room where it happened, bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was actually a Tony Braxton track that I was going to use, but I decided against that because I didn't want to be a dick.
That's new.
I was trying to turn over a new leaf. It didn't work very well.
Yeah, well,
I had the CD with the liner notes and everything with me in my bag. I was like, really? You gonna tell me I'm wrong?
Yeah.
You're just one of those. You're one of those.
I was one of those.
Yeah, you're further down the list here. Don't worry, we'll get to you.
Steel Valley is pretty cut and dry. You pull into the venue and you park wherever Keith or Larry or whoever tells you to, and try and stay out of the way. And then Aggieland is spread out way more, right? So there's
yes and no. So I mean, and on that note, as far as the actual venue and everything goes, I mean, I think leads to a point. First of all, arrive on time, be ready on time, know the schedule. The schedule is complete for both Aggieland and SVR right now. That will be going out with the music as we're recording this. So by the time you're hearing this, you already have it. The schedule's done. So everybody knows who needs to be there first. For either Aggieland or SVR, the first group of vehicles needs to be ready and locked and loaded Friday night, ready to judge at will Saturday morning as soon as we're ready. Because that first judging time affects the entire schedule, obviously.
Sure.
And so it's like if you're in that first group of vehicles, you need to be ready Friday night as if you're getting judged Friday night. And things will go a whole lot better for you and everybody else. And in that, as far as the timeline goes, the money round, invitational, network round takes priority over everything as far as the schedule goes. So if your vehicle is called up for the money round and you got a org judge sitting in there, you better kick them out and move on. Because if you're not ready on schedule, again, every 3-4 minutes that somebody isn't ready on schedule adds up to hours that were later at the end of the event. So, if you're not ready on time for when you need to be ready, you're going to lose your spot and you're not going to compete. I mean, that's pretty much how that has to go.
So be responsible and don't let a org judge get in your car 5 minutes before you're supposed to be ready.
If you do, kick them out. But so what I'm going to do, what I'm doing this year too, is kind of linking Group 1A spot and Group 2A spot, linking those two people to where it's kind of a buddy system. So when you see that car, you're next. So that way there can be some internal. I mean, we have Wingate and Jim Rogers and a couple others help at Aggieland, and then like you said, Keith and Larry and a couple others help at SVR as far as that movement goes. And they mostly know everybody, but I think having some internal accountability between the competitors to know, hey, again, the Group 1 doesn't really have anything to go on except just be ready when you're called to roll in. Like you said, Aggieland is more spread out, but the money round is all judged inside.
So you guys physically move the cars.
Yes, we're pulling 6 vehicles in, 6 vehicles out, 6 vehicles in, 6 vehicles out. So when you see that door open and you're the next group, you be ready to roll in.
Yep.
And you guys have both done enough of my shows. We roll pretty close as possible to on time as possible.
Sure.
What affects that not happening is people coming up who are in the first round or something like that saying, I don't have music on my iPad. I don't know how to do this. My car, I'm finishing building my car. No, sorry, too late.
or you have your mic array in the car. At 7:30.
Tuned right now. Hang on.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone with Jeffrey. Hold on.
You better be using 5G on that bitch. 3G is not going to be fast enough.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean there is a knowledge that you have to have, and then that helps the day go better and less stressful. But I mean, obviously the goal for Clifton is to put on the best show possible and then have the orgs be, surrounding that. So I noticed Cliff and I talked about this the other day. There's a lot of names on the Aggieland list that I'm not 100% familiar with.
There's a lot of new people.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
So, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. It's great. Cool. But be ready. Don't let anything surprise you, and have that music. It's a different whole different vibe. And Chris and Larry put on, 2 of the best shows, and I commend them both. Totally kind of different atmospheres, but I heard there's going to be keg stands and target practice at Aggieland this year, and
stripper poles. Whatever,
Yeah. And
Aggieland's a party. SVR is a competition. I think that's they're both fierce. They're both fierce competitions compared to anything else that I've ever put on. But SVR is much more of the bring your game face, do your thing. Aggieland's more let's hang out, but also there's a lot of shit talking that happens at Aggieland compared to SVR, I'd say. No. So it's two completely different environments.
Aggies down there. Yeah. They want to fight amongst themselves.
Well, one thing to remember, talking about being prepared and being ready for judge after judge after judge. If you have amps that get hot, bring a fan, a battery-powered fan, corded fan, whatever. Move air so your amps don't shut down, and everybody can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people have changed away from that brand of amp.
Mostly, yes, but you still have, it still can be an issue.
Yeah.
Don't let it be.
No, it's all good points. Have your power supply ready. Make things so you can connect it quickly.
I was gonna say, power supply, extension cord,
air conditioner.
At Aggieland, there's a lot of in and out, so there's not a lot of room to you
Park
don't
a trailer
have time.
inside.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have and on that, I mean, with Aggieland, I mean, it's not so bad now. I mean, the show used to be in June and it was hot.
Yeah.
Now doing it in April, it's pretty nice. I mean, I think we've hit the sweet spot for weather as far as that goes there. But if you have one, bring a tent, stay in the shade, stay near your vehicle. I mean, I think in regardless SVR or Aggieland, I don't know how the orgs are going to handle that but the orgs all have everybody's phone numbers and emails and everything else to try to keep that process going. But especially around the money round, especially at SVR where you're not moving your vehicle, where, hey, I'm going to be getting inundated by judges here soon. Be near your vehicle and stay there. And then while you're there, disconnect your damn Bluetooth. Because if your phone keeps popping up from honey, heart, sweetie pie, honey bunches while I'm judging your car and I keep having to reset my track because of it, or the volume keeps going up and down, or I'm getting calls while I'm in there, anybody that knows me, I never have my notifications on for my phone anyway. So getting other people's notifications while I'm working is really going to piss me off. So,
by the way, that's what comes up on my phone when Adam calls. The honey, whatever you just said,
honey bunches,
sweet pie, honey bun, honey bunch, whatever you just said.
Yeah,
Hearts and bears.
Hearts and bears.
Yeah. When my wife notifies me, it says the warden. So.
Nice. But yeah,
no, that's I'm
Bluetooth
excited.
Off.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys to get back into these shows, Cliff. I think it's going to be awesome. I hope eventually we can add another one or two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your goals are, but
one in Nashville would be fantastic.
I agree. I mean, I'd be fine with anywhere out in this area. It's funny because I do all these shows and I'm the one traveling everywhere. I've never had one nearby.
You don't want to come to Iowa, do you?
No.
Nobody wants to go to Iowa.
Well, see, Nashville is a good destination city, right, for people
Agreed.
to come.
Agreed. It's expensive as hell, but yeah.
Fuck yeah, it sucks. I'm glad. If I didn't buy my house when I did, I couldn't live here.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's insane. When you do show up on time with your music, knowing what time you're supposed to be there and everything else, you're well rested, you haven't overpartied, and you have your power supply hooked up and everything else, then also make sure your vehicle is, we're not saying, detailed to the hilt, but clean and cleaned out. No crap in the doors or pockets or cup holders.
Take car seat
Charles Whitney, keep your daughter out of the back seat while the vehicle is being judged. No extra people in the vehicle, preferably, especially if they're sleeping. Not good. But yeah, clean your car. Try to keep it clean. Check your glove box. Check your everything to make sure there's no pins rattling around or anything else that will affect both your outcome in terms of sound and just distractions in the vehicle of the judges while they're there.
Yeah.
So no 4-week-old French fries in the floorboard?
Preferably not. I won't make my typical reference joke there, but no.
The other thing I think we need to be better about as competitors is thanking the hosts.
Yeah.
That these two shows, there's no money made. It's a giant money pit.
At Aggieland, especially, it's a pure thousands of dollars out of Chris's pocket for Aggieland.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And Larry does anything and everything he can to break even.
Yep.
And take care of his judges. And any judge will tell you that those two shows are one, an honor to be at, but two, they're really, really taken care of.
Yep.
So that's one. Those two shows are ones I don't mind about entry fees because I know what those two hosts are doing.
Well, I feel the same way about the Parkinson's research show that we used to do in Georgia. That was another one. It's just a great event. I missed that one.
Maybe we move that one to Nashville.
Yeah, I'd be down.
Yeah.
If we can find a venue.
It'd be nice to, okay. I can look, preferably indoors.
I mean, yeah. I mean, at least if we can get, 10 vehicles or so indoors, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I know this is off subject, but the Nashville finals that was here years ago in the dump, those old buildings at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
For anybody that was here for that show, those buildings are no longer there. It is now an MLS soccer stadium.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they built at the fairgrounds below the racetrack. they built a new annex building, right? There's like 3 halls. They have
cool.
like drum show and stuff like that, which are plenty big enough to get cars in. I don't know the cost. I've been there for some other things, but yeah, those buildings that were full of lead paint and asbestos are no longer there.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a brand new facility. Within the last 3 years.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good knowledge base to have, because I love the Nashville area.
I think it'd be great. Last thing on the dirty vehicle portion, other than one guy is here, but our shows already kind of look like regular traffic at a Walmart. So if there are also dirty vehicles at a Walmart, I mean, like, I don't know, have some pride in what you're doing. It doesn't have to be fancy. I competed with a $1,000 vehicle with a $2,000 install. I know, probably about right? I mean, the double the install for the vehicle worth.
Yeah.
But but regardless, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody's judging you because of what your vehicle is, but have some pride in it. I mean, I think everybody will respect you the more you respect yourself in the vehicle, right? I mean, that's just how it works.
Yep.
So
put some effort into it.
Yeah.
Does Aggieland have a pretty good, I guess, outside the competitor draw versus like Steel Valley? Is there more of Pate's customers around? And
yeah, there's more foot traffic. You have more shops around that are coming in. I mean, there's a lot more within a few hours as far as people who are involved in the industry. So sure. A lot of people. I mean, people come to SVR to hang out too. But it's a little more focused and they're more famous people, quote unquote. Whereas Aggieland, I mean, yeah, you get, it's not foot traffic so much, but you definitely get a lot more just patronage of the event, just people coming to hang out.
Well, Texas is bigger and better and all that stuff too, but Pate's reach, in the industry with cars and car people, I would just assume that it is, but to the competitors that are there, grab those people and let them listen.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get involved. Like I really push my team and my guys to do that. And, it's obviously we have a brand to represent, but represent yourself. I mean, show off what you've worked hard for. And,
I think it's a big thing. Like once you're done or, focus on what you're there to do, but also then open your car and bridge the gap with people you don't know. And to our point earlier, like listen to as many vehicles as you can, because I think even if they're not top 3, top 5 vehicles, like there's a lot of vehicles out there that do cool stuff that you may not have heard before.
Yep. Like just going back to the things you haven't heard before, like one thing when I had the Mercedes that it did really well that I always got comments was like how wide it sounded, right? Like the thing is ridiculously wide. The width, yeah. That's one comment that I always got. And it did. It was a little special there. It had its shortcomings, but like I said, listen, right? Listen to other vehicles. Listen to your competitors' cars.
Yeah, that car was kind of like its owner. It was special in some aspects, and it has shortcomings in others.
What kind of special?
Well, we won't talk about keeping windows clean with you, but
you call me a window licker?
Yep.
Whoa. Now that we've lost the other 0% of our segment. I think on the listening part of it, reviewing your own vehicle during the process is very important. Check your presets and listen to the car before and after each judge, even if for 30 seconds, just to make sure everything's above board. And I think part of that too is making sure that the judges know where the volume is, which one to use, which track to use. If you have multiple volumes, expect that the judge might have picked the wrong one once or twice. So double check that those are the way they should be, because I know there's some complex systems out there that have a lot of different options, and judges kind of go with muscle memory. So they might have done the wrong thing. Sorry, maybe you don't have so many options. Nobody wants to hear your excuses on why you didn't do well because you used the wrong preset or because something got messed up or whatever, or you didn't know it until they got out. Like, check it as you go, before and after each judge, period.
What else, fellas?
One thing for returning competitors, especially ones who have a judge that they're familiar with, is don't try to play the game with the judges that you made changes that they'll like. Let it sort. As a judge, that's just going to piss me off.
Yeah.
Because, it's almost demeaning to me when people do that. Like, well, I made this change that, I think you'll really like this. I did this, da, 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 da. Like you're trying to play the game in my head. That's all you're trying to do. I'm like, if you made a change, it's worthwhile. We'll hear it. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Like hearing memory. Some people have incredible hearing memory. Some people don't. Don't expect somebody to notice your 0.5 dB change between last time and this time. Like we're sorting the vehicles there that day to the best of their abilities. The judges aren't computers, and even computers, if you put your fancy dancy microarray in there and, a week later you put it back in there, it's going to read differently if you did nothing.
100%.
Don't expect more out of the judges than you would the equipment that you're using, and don't play the game because it's not going to matter. At least it shouldn't matter. And if you're trying to make it matter, again, you're playing the game the wrong way, in my opinion. So,
yep. Just to reiterate, right? Be prepared, people. Like, don't show up 5 minutes before your judging time. Don't be the last one in the building when you're the first one to be judged. Just have your shit together. We've all done this. Most of us have done this enough that we know how to be ready.
Yeah.
So there's really besides an equipment failure, there's really no excuse.
And I mean, you guys both know that when it comes to legitimate OMG issues, we're all one big family. We're all one big team. We will make it happen. But also, there's a low threshold of putting up with itness for not being prepared. If you're showing if your malfunction is because of you not being prepared, or you're just, it just shows a lack of
respect.
Yes. Yeah. Lack of respect for the event, for the people around you, for everybody else. Like I said, every 5 minutes if somebody isn't prepared throws the whole show off by hours. So
don't fake a failure because you don't like your judging order.
Right. Yeah. If you want to switch with somebody else ahead of time and there's room to do that, come to me and we'll figure it out. But
don't open that door.
Well, I mean, between two people, if they want to switch, I don't care.
Whatever.
I mean, it's up to them.
Yeah.
As long as you're ready. I mean, you're swapping one person for another. I don't care. I mean, as long as there's no.
He let him change and go in that group instead of me, and now I'm with this group, and
Which I mean, I'm going to say, don't do that the day of. You want to talk to me 2 weeks before the show? We can arrange it. The day of. Again, if it's a legitimate catastrophe, then we'll figure it out. I mean, we've had people that have had their trailers flip over, that have had deaths in their family. Like, I mean, things happen, right? I mean, we're not saying that, but there's also usually the same number of people who, constantly seem to have some kind of failure, and it's like, man, that's not my problem.
If your factory source won't play the thumb drive that you counted on that judge using, then
which goes back to have your music prepared.
Yep.
I agree. That's the plus side to the providing the music. That is the plus side to it. And then the seasoned competitors, just get in and get your shit done and get out. Don't play games, and there is no advantage to marching order. Come on. Right. I see that all the time, and it's frustrating when there is actually time that could be made up and you're dragging your feet to get your stuff done, or you want to be last or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. With the quality of judges we have doing these big events,
I think Clifton does a pretty good job when he makes schedules, and I think that there's plenty of time to adjust for any special needs that you'd have before the show, or before you'd even arrive at the show.
Right.
That's the big thing with Cliff shows is he's always communication. Okay, we're here. Now it's time to go.
100%.
So, yeah. And honestly, that's with all shows. I mean, I think most of the time with the org shows, where they're not money round shows and stuff involved, there's plenty of ways to communicate, to find music, find judging, who's judging that day. You may have to look just a little bit, but be prepared. It goes for every single show you go to, and
or anything you do, not even car audio, like anything you're going to do at a competition level. Like, this is not a get together. I mean,
No.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, we want to have fun, but it's, we're here for a reason. That leads to one thing that Adam and I are both probably terrible at, but keep the noise down during judging.
Adam Loud, no.
Or me for that matter. But I mean, Aggieland is a little bit different in that, you have more of the competitors like outside in the periphery, and then you have the actual competition as far as the money round goes that's going on in kind of a concentrated area. But regardless, keep the noise down, show respect. It's distracting for judges when there's whooping and hollering going around. It's like, have fun, but keep the movement slow and keep it down, especially around car. SVR is, I think, worse about that because there could be judging going on anywhere around you at SVR.
That's kind of tight quarters now, so.
And you don't really know where it's happening, so it's like, just keep it down. Finals is the same way. Like, you really don't know who's getting judged where, so just show respect, keep it down. Don't be crazy, and it's just, again, for the respect of the event and the efficiency of it. Every time a judge gets distracted, that just slows you down that much more.
Well, and as a competitor, you only have to be paying a little bit of attention to what's going on around you, right? You should know if there's a judge in a car where a group of people are standing, right? If that car is yours as a competitor and there's a group of people go, hey, you mind moving? You mind being quiet? I got a judge. Most people will, right? They'll understand because they would want you to do the same thing for them.
Right.
So if it's an issue, just ask. Right? Don't blame it for there are a group of people standing in my car yelling. Well, did you ask them to move?
Right.
What we should do is we should get each one of Clifton's kids can come and they can follow a judge. And when a judge is in the car, they can raise a flag out in front of the car.
Quiet, please.
Like on a golf course. Quiet, please.
Nice.
He's got like 9 or 10 kids or something like that.
Hey, my dog just woke up.
Yeah, well.
Cool. Did y'all hear her snoring earlier?
That was
Clifton wasn't on the do not procreate list like you, apparently.
During the judging process, especially as far as the money round goes, especially for Aggieland and SVR, and especially for this year, don't expect much in the way of feedback. It's a big show. There's no time. Each one has 48 cars. Like, this is the biggest Aggieland we've ever had.
That's awesome.
Be respectful regarding that and the judge's time. It is short. Again, no arguing with the judge, even if they say something. If they say something that's negative in the 5 seconds that they have to give you verbal feedback, then that's probably because it was notable. Maybe take that, but also if that turns into being an issue or you have something that happens or whatever else, you need to bring your first recourse is to either go to like during Aggieland, go to Nick Wingate or come to me. And then same, SVR, go to Keith Turner or come to me. Don't go to Chris Pate. Don't go to Larry Tishner. Like, they're there to make sure everybody's having a good time. They're not there for the judging process. So, but again, if there's a concern, let's discuss it. I mean, we're not saying that, but we are saying like it's kind of the same as arguing with a police officer when you get pulled over for something. Like, you just gotta go with the blows with the call that they made. It's up to the court system later to figure that out. Best case scenario, you might be able to get a judge after the end of the day or message them afterward and give them some questions on, hey, I noticed this, or I noticed overall that you scored me low on this imaging score or this width score or whatever else. Do you remember anything on that? And a lot of the judges will. I mean, every one of these judges is really good. I mean, they're not here to fill a seat. Like, every judge at both events is an amazing judge. I would have zero problem with any of these people giving me feedback on my own vehicle as just one of them, much less all of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and they enjoy it too, right? Like,
yes.
They don't judge these events because they're making a lot of money doing it.
No, yeah, they're all losing money doing it. Trust me.
They enjoy listening and giving feedback, and our hobby in general, right? So they know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. Yep. Every one of them is personable enough to be able to grab and ask and get questions and everything else. And there's a lot of people here. Again, if you're coming here new and you don't really know anybody, let's get a conversation started and keep going. And we're probably an industry that's filled of more introverts than not. But
well, and don't be afraid to ask to listen to cars, right? Like,
yeah,
I, for one, usually don't go out and just like find, hey, come hear my car. But if you ask me, yeah, of course, as long as there's not a judge in there, yeah, of course I'm going to let you get in the car, right? So don't be afraid to ask.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one thing, especially with the conversation with judges, when you're having those conversations, and even other competitors, I mean, there's 2 brands represented in their own way in this podcast right now, but try to leave the brand names out of it. Even somebody like, oh, I've got this blah, 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 you're 6.5, or you're this, or you're that, or whatever. Like, cool. I want to enjoy the system. I mean, I'm happy for the business. I'm happy for that and everything else. But like, and I guess I'm making this conversation more between the competitor and the judge conversation more than anything, but also even competitor to competitor. Like, you can be a brand ambassador by using the product and doing your job and being a good person and being prepared and demoing your vehicle and keeping it open and having those conversations. And you don't have to mention the brand name once. If somebody asks you, you can tell them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying don't say it, but I'm saying the people who are like hyperactive about, I have this, I have that. Like, you're not selling the product any better by doing that. When you're in conversation with people, don't lead with that.
Well, I'll get, in my particular car, you can't see any of the speakers that are in the car.
Right.
And somebody will get in the car and first thing they're like, oh, what do you have? Well,
right.
Karma.
Yeah. I'll get.
I got plenty of karma.
So,
you meant the speakers.
So I was like, just listen, then we'll talk about it when we're done.
Sure.
Like I sent one of Team Karma's, made a little a thing on. Adam knows where I'm going. I said something about, man, these new Karma prototypes are unbelievable, right? And Adam's phone started blowing up with Team Karma members like, oh, what speakers does Brian have? Why didn't I get those? Yeah.
I think people look at things, but I look at my guys, and I didn't pick guys that are going to win a ton of trophies and a ton of, championships.
He's calling you losers, just if you're listening, just so you know.
No, I picked guys that I knew would be good humans, and I wanted them to do well, and they have come together, and really they worked together this last year, and they did really well, way better than I expected. But
they're all good people, Adam.
Going bigger than what we are, just like Cliff said, it's going to be hard to have that same kind of team mindset and goal.
Yeah.
But
there's definitely a certain size that is cohesive, and then a size that gets unbearable.
But there are some great brand ambassadors out there. There just are, and that's great. And being one is part of that, is being a good human and being conscious of, everybody in this industry pretty much knows everybody. We don't.
You don't have to put a branded T-shirt on to know who's involved with what. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I am at Aggieland and I'm trying hard to get down there, I'm going to fly in and fly out, and I will be there to have fun and enjoy the show and help support the guys that put it on, because they do such a great job. But I'll help anybody. I tell my guys that I don't care what they have. I want you guys to help anybody.
Make sure if you make it to Aggieland, Adam, if the cartel's there, make sure you have some of their spicy tequila thing that they make.
Yeah,
whatever.
I sent Mario a video of a pickup truck full of Corona, and they have this giant ice machine shooting ice on it. I fully expect a bed of a truck to have beer in it this year at Aggieland. So
that's awesome.
You're probably not far off.
Take notice.
With gun racks.
With gun racks.
Yeah, and horns on the hood.
I mean, Brian Mitchell's a good example of that brand ambassador. He wears the garb. His name is practically synonymous with Arc Audio. Everybody knows that. He's always, consistently been involved as a competitor, everything else. But when he's in sales mode, like if you're at Knowledge Fest getting a demo or something like that, yeah, you're going to get the rundown. That's his job.
Yep.
But as a competitor in the lanes, he does a great job of doing the marketing, doing everything. I mean, any brand that is serious about competition, I mean, again, Hybrid was the same way back in the day, and there's others. I think Arc and Hybrid were the ones that were really like the neck and neck, back in the early 2010s especially. but those two brands in particular had a lot of different people involved. I mean, and with that, you get lots of dynamics in that, and you get the people who can. I mean, and there was a lot of people. There were a lot of people then, in particular, that hated Team Hybrid just because of the persona, and that wasn't necessarily any one person or anything else. It just was like those were like kind of the loudest people.
Yeah.
And it's any recognition isn't necessarily good recognition. And I know people are like, well, if I don't hear anything about it, I don't know anything about it. I get it. But it can be frustrating. So that's all. We're harping way too long on this. Then really longer than I expected. But you can do a lot of good for the brands that are involved, and it's a good thing. I mean, that's competition is here for the industry. It's here to it works together. I think now competition is much more about the competitors than it ever has been, and I think that's a good thing. But with that comes, I think some etiquette around talking about brands. And not trying, and also not expecting that the judges are biased because of their brand. Any judges that we've picked are judges that we've worked with, myself especially, have worked with extensively. I have thousands of score sheets to go on. I have huge amounts of trends to go on. I have personal knowledge. I have everything. Like
all the numbers.
There's not a judge that you can come at me about unless they do something outright. You better give me specifics as far as this judge did this to me 30 minutes ago. This is what they said. And we walk over and that judge, we hear the full story and it checks out. Then yes, that will affect things, right? We will have a conversation about that. But implying that somebody is not able to be a fair judge because of their involvement with something, I can pretty much promise you I know. And I have veto decision on these judges. That's part of my process.
Yep.
And so if there's a judge that's been picked, you might as well just say, if there's an issue and you bring it forth, I probably already know about it and it's probably already been put into the mix. If I didn't, we'll put that into the mix and figure it out. But now's the time to do that if you need to. It's one of those things where there's a huge amount of credibility that has been built up with these people to do this. That's part of it. It's just like anything else that you do good in the world. It's no different. It's like these are the best people in the world at doing what they do that are available to do the job and be there and do it and work within the terms given and everything else. And there's been a huge amount of thought and process that has gone into each one of those decisions. So, hearsay isn't going to cut it. And before the event is the time to handle that. After the event, I'm not even really going to listen unless there was a specific thing that happened during the event.
Well, there's one particular judge that I used to not care for when they would judge my car. Not because I didn't like him as a person or anything like that. I was like, God, like, what do I have to do, right?
I want to make this person happy.
And I was just like, man, this person's just a dick, But come to find out, as I worked on the car, got it better, my scores started jumping up with said judge, and I was like, shit, they were right, Like, should have listened to him sooner. They had some good advice. And,
Good part with the network rounds is it's not all based on one judge. Like, one judge can go rogue, and it's still going to be okay. And so...
Yeah.
One judge, if it's one judge that you have a problem with, then don't worry about it. It'll be fine. If it's 6 judges you have a problem with, that's really when, there's obviously that's going to affect the outcome. That's just the same as going to a single judge event, right? But if you have a problem with 6 judges in an event, you should not be coming to the event. Stay home. I don't care.
Yeah. Problem is the judges aren't the problem at that point.
Right.
Not you, it's me.
Yeah. Am I the drama?
Yeah. Go back home.
We're all better off that way because this is something that you're voluntarily doing and you're paying money to do it and be part of the process. Enjoy the process and learn from the process. That's all you can do.
You're basically paying money to get kicked in the huevos.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, again, any competition. Like, that's...
Yep.
It's not unique.
Yep. Yeah. And for me, I could care less. I mean, we all like to do well. But for me, it's getting to see people that I only get to see a few times a year.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And the camaraderie that all of us share. So
all the nerds. And I think on that, as far as like demoing, I mean, again, demo your system, please. I mean, it's as much as you can. And when you do, I guess and this is why I like doing what we do with as far as the events go, but also, when you're demoing your car, one of the most fun parts for me was picking the music that really picked out the strings of the vehicle, where people could hear stuff that maybe they hadn't heard before, right? And so demo cool music and maybe go outside of your own knowledge base, even on that.
So no Spanish Harlem.
I don't want to hear Money for Nothing. I don't want to hear Spanish Harlem. Give me a little bit of education. I'm not here, when I'm demoing a vehicle, I'm not here necessarily to evaluate it. I want to enjoy my time with it. And it's the same, I think, for the judges. Like the judges, on the flip side, the judges aren't really there to enjoy themselves in your vehicle. Like, it's not a demo. It's not, they are evaluating thing to thing. They're looking at each thing as a blob.
Yep.
So it's
car versus score sheet.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know how else to say it. They're not really there to enjoy it, but you have lots of room there to have lots of people be able to hear the stuff that's unique about your car, for you to talk about that stuff. That's what the get together portion of this that makes it fun for people is. So, have options and bring out strengths and have a wide genre of music that exposes yourself and others to stuff that they haven't heard before.
And if there's a car, and I've run into this a couple of times, and Adam knows, we've talked about it. At SVR last year, right? My car was pretty good. There's one particular person that I don't know if they didn't enjoy it or they couldn't explain. Their only comment was, "Well, it's got a great center." But what? Okay, what does that mean? Like, tell me what you're hearing, right? Like, and I'll see if I can explain something to you, or let me help you.
It plays music. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It plays.
It doesn't really smell that good, but it plays.
That's the worst. The judge gets out like, "Oh, your car smells nice. Or your wheels are clean."
It's even worse when they're like, "Man, I hate your wheels."
Dude, I had a judge get out at SVR last year and go, "Your left and right's backward," and walk off. I was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah, I know who that little fucker from California is. So
don't want to mention any names, but his initials are Scott Welch.
Yeah. I was just like, "Wait, what?" Well, and Mick Wallace told me one time at finals, I was like, "So what do you think?" He's like, "Oh, it's the best car I've heard today." I was like, "Really?" Like, no, the silence between the tracks was the best that I've heard all day. I was like, shit.
It's not the music, it's the silence between the notes.
Yeah, it's the silence between the tracks that really got me. I was like,
it was really good when I paused it.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Dark.
I was like, I was confused for a second. I was like, ouch.
No, there's the music thing is cool when you demo, and if you don't know the song that they played, you ask. I mean, that's how I get. Brian and I share a ton of music back and forth, and
I just turn Shazam on, put it in my pocket, and then I have a list after I'm done.
You're not allowed to have your phone out while you're judging. No,
I said in my pocket.
It's not all that you play with in your pocket.
Are you clicking the Shazam button? No.
No, you just put on auto, and then it just does it.
Oh, I don't know how to use Shazam, so.
Shazam.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
This was good. It's longer than probably Clifton wanted it.
That's fine. My final notes would be: don't expect to win, just because a few people anecdotally liked your car and said it was the best one there or whatever else. Doesn't mean that you're going to win. Accept what you got that day and move on. Next time might be better. Respect others. Keep your dignity. Be aware that you're subject to scrutiny in what you do, especially the more known you are and the bigger your position is, especially in the lanes, and the more you expect others to give you credibility, the more scrutiny you're going to get with that. So just know that not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. And have fun. I mean, I think that's the part that if you do these things, you'll have fun. I mean, that's the hard part. Like, it sounds like at least I sound like I'm being an asshole about this, but it's one of those things where I feel like the more that you can put out there and what's the secret sauce? This is the secret sauce. Come prepared. Yeah. And then you can have fun during the event, knowing that you're not just having to stress out the whole time worrying about all these little things.
Well, I think that having fun has gotten lost from time to time And that just makes it miserable for everybody, right? If people aren't having fun.
I can pretty much guarantee you that if you're at Aggieland and you come prepared and you're ready to go, you'll have fun. I mean, it's not
absolutely. It's a great event.
It's a hard event not to have fun at. If you do not have fun there, then that's probably your problem.
Yeah, please don't come back.
100%.
Anything else, Adam, from your end?
No, I mean, I think everybody's geared up, excited. I wish these shows could be bigger and there could be more of them, but that's part of the prestige of them is that there's just only a few of them. And like you said, take pride in what you're doing and take pride in what you bring down there, and be appreciative of your time there and the people that are working. Be respectful, and then, like you said, everybody will have fun.
Brian?
I got nothing. Have to go put the interior back in my car to get ready for next weekend.
Details.
Yeah, it currently doesn't have seats or any interior panels.
Doesn't. Those are overrated.
No problem.
Just get a bucket.
It really is.
Well,
I have to sit on the floor to drive it. See you guys.
How about the ones we especially like? Which ones? The ones with the cars that go, I hear you. Hit it.